Heyo, I'm Christie Rocha, podcast host and content creator, and I am thrilled to welcome you to the Inner Edit. This podcast is all about us, the creators, the storytellers, the visionaries, navigating the ever-changing online world. We are in this together, facing challenges unique to our craft, like burnout, setting boundaries, dealing with negativity, and that oh-so-familiar imposter syndrome. Join me as I chat with fellow creators, therapists, and coaches to explore collaborations, making connections, diving into creating conscious content, figuring out how to maximize our content output, and discovering that mindset magic that keeps us going. Whether you're a content creator seeking resources or just curious about the behind-the-scenes world of digital creators, the Inner Edit is your resource for personal and professional growth in the digital world. We're all going through the same things, so let's talk about it. Hit that subscribe button and welcome to the Inner Edit. Hello. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited for the first interview of the Inner Edit podcast. Today, I am joined by the one and only Tara Clark. You know her, you love her, and I know you're just as excited as I am that she's here today. She is the creator of Instagram's @ModernMomProbs, as well as the author of the book Modern Mom Probs, A Survival Guide for 21st Century Mothers. And I'm just going to add that I think she's a pretty fantastic human being that I simply adore. Tara has been a content creator for some time. In our last conversation together on the show, which is linked in the show notes, we learned about how she got her start on Instagram. Since then, she's created a podcast called Modern Mom Probs. As previously mentioned, she's written a book, and she's also now a speaker and advocate for creator wellness and burnout. In April, she spoke about creator burnout at the Mom 2.0 Summit, and today we're going to talk all about that. Creator burnout, and all the other issues that might be eating at you as a creator and solopreneur, like personal boundaries in social media, and making adjustments as the industries change. Tara said quite a few times that she could talk about this topic for hours and hours, which I would be happy to do with her because she knows her stuff. All right, let's get into it. Here's Tara. Hello, Tara Clark. So good to see you. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to be chatting about this. This is something that is so near and dear to my heart that I could talk about this for the next 6 hours, but I know we don't have that kind of time.
I know. If only. We've already been off air kind of talking shop, but it just so overlaps to just our mental capacity for doing all of the things. Oh my gosh, it's just
all the
so
things,
much
all of the time. But I think now it's coming down to like having the right systems in place to like protect our mental health.
Oh my gosh, yes. Okay, and we'll get to systems, but I want to start with your sweet spot and area of interest right now. Talk to me about, in your own words, what is creator burnout? What does it mean?
Creator burnout is the feeling of exhaustion and overwhelm that content creators face because what's inherently different about our industry versus other industries is that we're on a hamster wheel. We don't ever get to just close our phone, forget about it during the weekend, and pick it up on Monday morning at 9 a.m. like you would in a traditional office job, right? There's always content to be created. And I always say, like, there was that viral video that was like, everything is content, right? So your mind is constantly thinking about that. And you're an entrepreneur, right? So you're thinking like, oh, I need to try to do that to make money. And I need that as a revenue stream. And you're reading about these other people that are crushing it. And so we're on this constant hamster wheel of producing and trying to reach to the next level, whether that's likes or engagement or money or whatever it is. And that's what differentiates this industry versus other industries. And so the burnout is what we feel because of that pressure, whether it's external pressure or internal pressure.
Okay. Now this is just making my mind go in directions already. And I want to ask you, I was at a networking event recently, and I was sharing with, it was a small group, so I was sharing with the ladies a little bit about this rebrand that I'm doing and the pivoting, and there were so many questions about content creation and like just what do you mean by that? Do you mean influencer? What do you mean by creator? Like someone was like, "Oh, I'm a photographer. I create content, but I don't really know that I resonate with what you're saying." Like I don't know. I just as someone who's been doing this a long time, who's identified as a content creator for a long time, does it bother you? Does it affect you? Like I don't know. I just like it gave me like it put my back up a little. I was just like I don't know. Part of me was like, "Okay, this just isn't my target audience to understand this," and the other part of
Yeah.
me was like, "This is exactly why I'm doing this because it's still not known that this is a real thing." Like, I don't know. I don't even have a question.
Yeah.
It just, like,
No,
made
no,
me think
no,
of
no, it's
that.
fine. Okay, I can totally explore that because I'm currently reading a book called Swipe Up for More by Stephanie McNeil. It's a great book and it's actually exploring lives of influencers. And she
Okay.
makes this differentiation. And I literally just read this page yesterday, so it's fresh in my mind. And what she was talking about the difference between the influencers and the content creators and sort of that like rub between that is that if you shut your eyes and imagine an influencer, right? She's typically blonde and she's tall and she's thin and she's conventionally attractive and
From Utah.
from Utah. I was going to say that, but I wasn't gonna, from Utah,
Whoops.
right? Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. And so that's what you typically think
Yeah.
of an influencer. I am not, I don't fit that mold, right? I'm short, I'm brunette, I'm from New Jersey. Um and so I don't influence anything, but what do? I create content, right? And so whether it's funny videos or inspiring and endearing memes or a podcast or a blog or whatever it is, like I
Mhm.
create content for people to consume. And so I think that's the differentiation between an influencer and a content creator. And that's what Stephanie talks about in the book. But I highly recommend read it or
Yeah,
I'll
I
lend
wrote
it
it
to you.
down. Yeah.
Um and so if you sort of imagine that those are the two different tracks that
Mhm.
go with it. Now, again, this isn't 100% of the time. Like, there are tons of brunette influencers,
Right,
right?
right,
So I'm
right,
not just
right,
saying that, but
right.
I'm sort of saying stereotypically speaking.
Yes.
Um, and so and even like content creation falls under a lot of different things. Not everyone creates video. And like you mentioned, some people are photographers, some people are illustrators. There's a lot of
Right.
different types of content that fall within it. So for me personally, I've always just felt more comfortable calling myself a content creator versus calling myself an influencer. One, because like I said, I don't influence anything. And my family hardly listens to me. So why would other people listen to me? Um, and two, influencers sort of gets a bad rep for what it
Yeah.
is. And these women are very talented. They're excellent photographers. Many of them are excellent at life hacks and crafts and coming up with different ideas. And so I have to say, there's a lot of talent in that pool. It's just not what I do. I don't have that talent. That's not who
Okay.
I am.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I think
Yeah.
that, um, I kind of it gave me that moment of pause of like, do I know what I'm doing here? Like,
You do, but you probably weren't with the right people. Because
yeah,
if you were with like more of our crowd of people, people would be like, yes, I
yeah.
understand.
And then I actually thought of the event that you did a month or so ago where I felt completely understood and I felt like everybody was like, "Oh, tell me more about that." And I'm like, "Okay. All right, take a breath." But this is it too, right? Like no doctor goes into a room and says, "I'm a doctor of this kind of medicine," and people go, "What is that? Are you sure that's a thing?"
Hmm.
Like that's like part of it, right? Is having to
Yes,
sometimes feel like you have to justify your existence and justify your livelihood.
very much so. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
It's
that
hard.
yeah.
I even have a hard time explaining what people do. They'll be like, oh, what do you do? And it depends which audience I'm speaking to. Sometimes I'll just say marketing.
Mhm.
Sometimes, like if I'm saying this like as an example, if I'm at the dentist and someone's like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm in marketing,
Yeah.
which is true, right?
Right.
I mean, I
Right.
guess it's the easiest answer. It's the laziest answer for me
Yeah.
to say.
Yeah, I
But if
get it.
someone like I think actually cares, then I may explain what I do. But
Yeah.
it's a little hard. There's a nuance to it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's go back to the burnout. So for you, I can imagine that this has become something that you talk about because you've experienced it.
Mhm.
What are the signs for you that you're burning out, that you're getting to that place? And then how do you cope, course correct? What do you do?
Yeah. So last year, it really hit me. My account, just to give a little background of who I am and what I've been doing, is that I started my account in 2016. And that was pretty much on the early side of parenting accounts on Instagram. And at that time, I actually said to my friends and family, you know what? I'm going to start a parenting Instagram account. And my friends and family were like, what are you talking about? Like, that was simply like, just wasn't a thing. And I was like, no, 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 it's going to be a thing. Like, promise. And they're like, okay, yeah, good luck with that. And so I did it. And I mean, the full story is I was living in New York City at the time. My account name was called NYC Mom Probs. I moved from New York City to the suburbs, had an existential crisis because I no longer had New York City mom problems. So in April of 2017, I switched the name from NYC Mom Probs to Modern Mom Probs. And then the account just took off from there. So I like to think that, 2017, 2018 was like the golden age of Instagram, at least for me, right? Every morning you were waking up and you had 1,500 new followers a day, 2,000 new followers a day. It was bananas. It was just bananas.
Wow.
And that kept going for several years until last summer. So the summer, June of 2022, all of a sudden that just stopped, as if a light switch went off, and my engagement was down, my followership was down. I was like, what is happening? And so then I felt like I was caught up in this sort of, I don't want to say spiral because that really sounds very negative, but for lack of a better term, spiral of what's wrong with me? Why isn't my stuff resonating? What's going on? And if you also think about the timing of that, right? So it's June of 2022. TikTok has taken over, and there's a new breed of content creators, for the most part, which are people coming from TikTok onto Instagram, and they're extraordinarily talented. And the industry changed, the landscape changed. And so then I was forced to really look, and I'm still doing this, forced to look at it saying okay, what do I do now? Where do I fit in all of this? Okay, so to answer your question, how did I realize that I was going through burnout? If you pick up your phone and you start to feel anxiety in your chest, and you start to feel a little bit sweaty, and it's not, no, I'm serious about this, because it really is the anxiety of looking at your performance of things, looking at your account, looking at peers, and falling into the comparison trap. So there are so many things that you're starting to see. But if you are physically feeling sick when it comes to doing your work, then maybe that's when you need to take a step back and take a break.
Yeah. Okay. So the strategy for you is to take a step away from it, to remove yourself from it.
It is one of the strategies, because what I've noticed is that I'm a happier person when I'm not on my phone.
Yeah.
And if I spend too much time on my phone scrolling, deep diving into different things, many times we like to tell ourselves it's research.
I know.
Oh,
I
I'm
was just thinking that.
researching, trending audios. I'm researching what the people are doing. I'm researching this and that. And too much of that really has a negative effect on you. So I think it's really important to just put down the phone sometimes, go sit down with a notebook, maybe write out your ideas, as opposed to doing research that way. You can look and see what people are doing. You can look and see what your best performing posts were, things that really resonated, but then put your phone down and, like I said, grab a notebook and sort of journal away. My friend Libby Ward from Diary of an Honest Mom, about a year or two ago, she had said to me, she's on this phenomenal trajectory. And she said to me, the only thing that she does is really just focus on her own stuff. She sort of puts on her blinders.
Yeah.
And she literally went like this. She's like, I just put on my blinders and I don't look at what other people are doing. And I'm just going to just do my own thing. Yeah. And she's been extraordinarily successful with that. And so that's how she just doesn't fall into the comparison trap. Now, having said that, I know that she struggled with these feelings as well, because when you are a solopreneur, and many influencers are, or many content creators are, they're not to the point where they have teams and teams of people. Probably there are those people out there, but I'm saying the majority of content creators are working maybe with themselves, maybe an assistant, something like that. It is so overwhelming for the reasons of what you and I were talking about when we were off air. Of you want to be able to create all of the videos, and then when the videos don't land properly, you're thinking, gosh, what is it with me? And I don't want to waste my own time to create something that nobody's seeing, but you know it has value, but at the same time, then no one's seeing it. And so we get stuck into this vicious cycle of doubting ourselves.
Yeah.
And then also getting mad that you're wasting your time while you're doubting yourself.
Yeah, that's the ultimate thing. I think especially because like you're saying, as a solopreneur, or a lot of times even, yeah, like it starts as a side gig, right? So when you only have this really limited time to put to it, and then you spend the hours doing it and you put it out there and it
It's
flops, you're
heartbreaking.
just like, dude,
It's
come
heartbreaking
on.
because it's taking you away from other things that you love. Like maybe it's taking away from time with your children or your partner. And so that really hurts because like
Yeah.
that's time that you feel like, oh, now I'm not going to get that back. And so it's a really delicate balance, the life that we live as content creators. And I think um I don't know a content creator who does this full-time or full-time-ish that hasn't felt like this.
Yeah.
I feel it's like the system is almost set up for that. You know, it's like a
Yeah.
systemic issue.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that we're like addressing this because like I said, I could talk about this for 6 hours. I've
Yeah.
I've been doing this job for such a long time that like, I've seen pre-pandemic social media, post-pandemic social media. Like
Mhm.
I could speak about this landscape. I could speak about, my network of friends and things that we've all gone through. So I'm just glad we're talking about it today.
Yeah, I think when you talk about the hamster wheel, it's like when you think about it, traditional most things, whether it's education, corporate, you know, I don't know, I think about most lanes that people are going to go into professionally. It's like there's no promotions. There's no job security. If Zuckerberg decides to like shut everything down tomorrow, it's like see you later.
Yep.
Um and there's no finish line. There's no I achieved this benchmark, because whatever your viral video is, the next day the platforms have moved on.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
like wild. Like you're just constantly the hamster wheel, the chase. It's like the chase never ends. And that is exactly how they were designed. So we're human beings trying to fit into this machine that is designed to just keep us turning. You gotta like get off. You gotta get off sometimes. You gotta like jump off the machine.
That's what it is. That actually, it's funny that you say that. Like that is really my advice that I tend to give people. Back in April, I spoke at the Mom 2.0 Summit on creator burnout. And
Mm,
I was on a panel, and there was one woman, she was a medical doctor. So she was speaking about burnout physically, but also about burnout in medical school and residency. I had another woman who was like a corporate trainer. And then I was the content creator. And so many people came up to me and they were like, of all the people that were on the panel, we really loved what you had to say because you lived it and then you gave actionable items. And then, you know, and so I was appreciative that they enjoyed it. And one of the things that I say, and it's really true, one of the actionable items is, like I said before, you have to learn how to put your phone down so that you can then be creative. Take a
yeah.
shower, go for a walk, do something that's not necessarily on your phone. I have my best ideas when I'm not on my phone. When I'm plugged into my phone is when my brain sort of just goes bleh, and then
Mhm.
you're just like addicted to the dopamine hits of scrolling.
Right.
But really, what we have to learn how to do is compartmentalize ourselves as a person, me as Tara Clark, as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter, as a friend, versus the Tara Clark that you see on Modern Mom Probs and on
Yeah.
Instagram and on the podcast. And
Mhm.
I know that I am worthy and that I am good and that I have all of those feelings in my personal life, but
Mm,
then in my professional life, I'm like, I'm not good enough. I don't do anything. I'm such a loser, this
mm,
and that. And it's heartbreaking. And
yeah.
people, will look at me and say like, "Wow, you've like achieved success. So, like you've built something, you have something." And it's true. And I'm not saying that I haven't, and I'm not saying that I'm not grateful for all of those things.
Right.
But at the same time, I doubt myself so much more as a professional than I do as a mother and as a wife and all of those things. Like, I feel like I'm kicking ass in all of those things in my
Yeah.
professional life. I mean, in my personal life, excuse me,
Right.
but not necessarily in my professional life. And so it's hard to not blend the two. But for me, I have to compartmentalize and say, this is Tara Clark, the person, and then this is Tara Clark, the professional
Yeah.
content creator. So
So,
that the algorithm doesn't get into my brain and
yes.
make me feel like I'm a terrible person.
Yeah. So, given everything you just said, what keeps you in it? Why not just say screw it?
A cell phone addiction.
Fair.
um no, I mean, yes and no. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I love, love, love connecting with people and chatting with people like you on this podcast, on my own podcast. I
Mhm.
love bringing solutions for modern mom problems to people, right? So I say on my podcast that, like, we are trying to solve modern mom problems, but if we can't solve them, then at least we're having fun talking about them.
Mm.
And so that's my mission. Helping moms is my mission. Helping content creators is my mission. I'm everyone's biggest hype girl. Like, ask so many of my
Oh,
friends
I
are always
know.
like, at
Yeah.
Mom 2.0, like everyone was like, Terry, you're just like a hype girl. And like they would say to me too, like, why don't you hype up yourself the way you hype up others? Well, for
Mm.
me, it's so much easier to hype up my friends who are super talented than it is for me to hype up myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you need a cheerleader, I am your girl.
Yes.
Um, but what keeps me in it? Helping others. Helping
Yeah.
others and meeting and connecting with incredible people.
Yeah. Yeah. I
It's
mean,
the daily grind of posting on social that I don't care for. It's all
yeah.
the other stuff I love.
Yeah. And I ask because, I haven't done this is only the second interview I've done on this topic specifically, but just based on the amount of conversations that I have, I feel like I tend to draw out in my questioning sort of the dark negative sides, but at the end of the day, we all still show up and do it.
Yeah.
And there are really amazing things that come from it, and I don't want those to get lost because,
Oh, it's true. I
you
can
know
actually say, true story. I think I am a better parent now because of the things I learned on social media.
mm,
And let me explain that. So I like to say that I practice conscious parenting, and I've learned that through meeting incredible people and interviewing incredible people and following accounts of incredible people.
mhm,
And so that has helped me on a personal level. And I'm sure that's helped many other people on a
yeah,
personal level. And talking about breaking generational cycles and the trauma that goes with that. So there are a lot of great conversations that are coming in to social media, and I'm so glad that we have those. So that's sort of like a separate thing, but
yeah,
I can say definitively that based upon excuse me, but based upon my networks and friends and all of that, like, I am a better person and a better parent because of it.
mhm. Okay, so going back to what you were saying about, the personal Tara, the professional Tara, over the years, what have you established as your personal boundaries for what you share versus what you keep to yourself? And how did you come up with what those boundaries are?
Yeah, boundaries are so, so important in this industry because it's very easy to just blend the two.
Hmm.
I am very particular about what I share about my family. And I've always sort of said right from the get go, I've always said that Modern Mom Probs was about the topics and not the Tara Clark show. Only recently did it migrate more into being about Tara Clark because the industry changed and people
Yes.
are like, oh, we want to know like who the
Yeah.
person is behind the brand, right? And so
Yeah.
I was incredibly reluctant to do that because that just like wasn't my bag. And so um I'm still very sensitive about that kind of stuff. A lot of people don't even know what my family makeup looks like necessarily. I have a husband, I have a son. I talk about them on the podcast, but
Hmm.
not necessarily on social because I find the podcast is a much more intimate sort of place to do that versus just like throwing my whole life in front of everything. And my friend Erin Morrison, she has an account called It's the Conscious Mom. She once told me, and I really love this, that not everyone deserves your vulnerability.
Mhm.
And that really I kept that really close to my heart, because what she's saying there, and it's true, is when you feel like you want to share because you think that you're helping people, or you feel good about sharing a certain issue or situation in your life, then yeah, feel free to do that. But it's not necessarily meant for everyone out there all of the time,
Yeah.
with hundreds of thousands of people or
Right.
millions of people seeing you. And I think as content creators, it's important for us to think about that and to decide what should be for public consumption and what should be for our own personal lives.
Mhm.
And everyone has their own level of comfort with that. I like to say, like, I'm a little bit more private
Mhm.
than some of the other ones, because I'm not there taking pictures of my kitchen and we're, I don't know, baking a cake together
Right.
sometimes, but not really. Um, but it's keeping my family's privacy has always been like one of the single most important things to me.
Yeah. And I think what's so great about the fact that we've been talking about how quick this industry moves and everything, like, you can change your mind. You could have started,
Yes.
you can reestablish your boundaries at any time, right? You can decide you wanna do things differently. It's your platform. Like, you not you're not
Yes.
beholden to
No,
anyone
that's it. I mean,
with
that's
that.
the thing. I probably went 5 years without really like pulling back the curtain of like,
No,
hi, I'm
I
Tara.
remember I didn't even know your name for years. Like, following Modern Mom Probs, it was just Modern Mom Probs. You had no idea. It could have been anyone. Never saw your face, your name, nothing for years. And then we started to see you.
Then we started seeing me, but then you know what? That's when my account tanked. So uh
God. Oh, if that is not a mind F, I don't know what
it
is.
is, it is. And that's something that I have to like sort of, come to terms with as well. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, that's Tara. Oh yeah, no thanks.
No, it just the whole thing changed. You're right though. Like, the
The
whole
industry
beast changed.
really
Yeah.
changed, the landscape changed. And for
Yeah.
people that are sort of like new to it and don't understand, sort of, I like to call it like pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, that
Mhm.
don't understand like the pre-pandemic landscape of it,
Yeah.
it's just a different thing. But yes, once I made like a face reveal, people were like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
Stop it. All right. Well, so I like this advice from Erin. Not everyone deserves your vulnerability, and it's touching on something that actually, uh, in my interview with Libby a while back,
Mhm.
talked about this idea of, what responsibility, if any, the creator has to the community, or, I want to say followers. It just feels icky at this point, but
Yeah.
and it reminds me of the Libby conversation, because it was like during, I want to say it was at I interviewed her like the week of, unfortunately, another US school shooting, and here she is in Canada, demand her followers demanding she have something to say about it, and she's like, not only is this not my country, but like, give me a minute to breathe. And so they're all kind of like intertwining for me in this moment of, do you feel you have a responsibility to your followers, your platform, your community? And if you do, like what level of responsibility? Like, do you feel the need to speak out on every public issue? How do you handle it? I'm sure people are hammering you for the same sort of information and same sort of opinions. Like, how do you handle that?
It's a really, really delicate balance. And I actually specifically remember when that happened and when Libby was going through that, because just like you said, like sometimes we don't even have a chance to process
Yeah,
something before people are saying like, well, what's your take on this? You're like, I
right,
don't know. I don't even know my own take on this, let alone my own like public facing take on this,
right.
right? Um, and yeah, that's a really challenging situation to be in, especially because there are certain topics that people want to hear about or want to know about. And unfortunately, the school shootings is is such a tragic one that that it comes up more often than I could ever imagine or ever
Hmm.
wish to be the case, unfortunately. But I think that people need to understand that content creators and influencers are still people too, and that they do sometimes need a moment to process situations the same way that they do, right? That we're not, you know, like a fictional character that has a
Right.
script in front of us and says like this is what you're going to say when this happens. It's like no, we don't have that. Like we have to sit and think through this. Like these things are tragedies and they're horrible. And yes, we're going to come out against them, obviously, against tragedies. But um yeah, it's so sad that it keeps happening like that. It just
Yeah.
absolutely breaks my heart.
Where do you land with, you know, DMs, comments, like as someone who talks about motherhood and the problems within motherhood, are people looking to you for advice, asking questions, wanting you to be more than a content creator? Like how do you handle that? Like you're not a therapist. You don't know these people's whole lives. Like, but I can only imagine the DMs that you get. Like, how do you deal with that?
You know what's funny about Instagram? Like they recently implemented this new like sort of like filtering system in the DMs. So
Oh
so
yeah.
many of my DMs just get lost
Oh.
and then they go into some sort of like folder of like hidden DM people. No, it's true. It's so often um I do go in my DMs and obviously check them,
Hmm.
but I'll see things from like 16 weeks ago or 20 weeks ago. So
Yeah.
um, it's not as clean as I would like it to, and I'm sure, like, Instagram's doing that to, like, protect me and my mental health, that I'm not seeing, like, all of these messages that are constantly coming through.
Hmm.
Um, but when I do catch the occasional one that's not hidden deep in the dark recesses of Instagram's DM folders, um, I always respond. Well, I mean, especially if it makes sense too. Like I respond, and people are always like so grateful that I
Yeah.
respond. I'm like, of course I'm going to respond. So if it's something that is out of my depth professionally, I may then suggest that they reach out to, if it's like postpartum depression or something, obviously I'll try to like send them
A
to a
resource or something.
resource
Yeah.
that would be, yeah, that would be helpful. If it's something like, oh, I need, advice on something simple, then I'll provide that advice. It just depends on sort of what the situation is. If it's
Yeah.
something like, really out of the world, like I just won't respond,
Yeah.
something like super crazy. But that doesn't happen too often. Most of my responses or DMs are people saying like, "Oh, I love your account. I love the content, keep up what you're doing." Like I said, occasionally it will be advice, but
Not too
more
bad.
often than not, no.
It's
It's a lot
manageable.
of, you know what it is? It's actually like a lot of like sketchy like spam bots,
I
or it's a
know.
lot of so much of that. Um, or a lot of like random like, will you do a promo? So
Yeah. It's like if you're interested, DM this account. It's like, why isn't this account just DMing me? Like that, it's like
exactly.
you're
It's
screaming spam. Like,
exactly. It's
stop
so
it.
much spam. And so yeah, I do appreciate the special filter folders that they have. It just so happens that like almost all of my stuff goes into that. And so that's how I miss them.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Good
so
on that.
they're putting real people with those spam bots.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I think for me, part of what gives me a level of burnout is sort of the constant questioning of like where to go next. Um and you've done this now. You've changed from New York City mom probs to modern mom probs. You've added your podcast. You know, how do you decide where to go next?
It used to be easier for me because opportunities would present themselves, and I
Mm,
have a tendency to always say yes to things, and so that's sort of how it was. At one point I was featured in a magazine, in a local magazine in Bergen County, New Jersey, and a book editor reached out to me and he was like, "You know what? You should write a book." And I was like, okay. And so then he put me in contact with this literary agent and she got me a book deal. And so that happened spring of 2020. And so that's how I got my book. Right. And then I have a style box and they approached me in I guess it was spring of 2021. No, yes, spring of 2021. And I said, yeah, sure, let's do that. And so we have the clothing rental subscription service. And so then with the podcast, people reached out to me and they're like, hey, you should do a podcast. And I was like, okay, yes. So many times when you're in a certain position and it's really truly a privilege, people come to you and present opportunities. And so I sort of yay or nay the real ones. Lately, like as of right now, where we're sitting right now, I feel the same way you are. I'm like, I don't know
Mm,
where to go anymore. I don't know what to do anymore. My account is in a weird place, a different place from what it used to be.
mhm,
Um, I love doing my podcast. That's probably my favorite thing that I'm enjoying. It's the day-to-day social
mhm,
on Instagram that really burns me out that I don't love.
mm,
So I think it's trying to create something that does spark my joy. So to answer your question about like where to go, I think sometimes again that's a matter of like pulling back and taking a look at what your landscape looks like. What do you have going on personally and professionally, and saying like, what is filling me with joy? If you're a business, what is profitable? Where can I cut costs, like, or where can I increase revenue? And so that's a separate sort of side of that, but it's still part and parcel with how I decide what to do next.
mhm. The word that I wrote down as you were talking is, you're evolving, right? Like your
Yes.
account, everything's evolving.
Yeah.
Um, and that word to me has a really positive, uplifting, inspiring connotation. But there's also a lot of fear, I think, that comes with that evolution. And the connection with the fear to me always comes back to relevancy. Like, do you fear the pivots or the changes or the evolutions as, impacting your relevancy, and do you care anymore?
That is such a brilliant question, Chris. I really like such a good question. Um, Going back to yeah, I've felt at least for the last year or so that I'm on the cusp of a pivot, that I don't know exactly what that pivot is going to be or what that pivot's going to look like for a couple of reasons. One, based upon what my account has been doing over the last year. And two, because my son is 10 years old now.
Yeah,
So I am no longer in the trenches of
right.
hard motherhood. When your children get older in elementary school, newsflash, things get a little bit easier.
Mhm,
It's not super easy, but it's not like when you had a 2-year-old.
right.
And so things change, your content changes, all of that kind of stuff. And so it's not that, I feel disingenuous talking about postpartum things or toddler things. It's just like that's not where I'm at right now. So to talk about that kind of stuff, I know I'm helping other people, but
Mhm.
it's just not where I'm at physically or
It's not
emotionally.
fulfilling you as much
It's not.
as
It's just
when
not
you're
where.
in it. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And so going back to your relevancy question is that I know my account is at, there's like a life cycle of a product, like a product life cycle.
Mhm.
And I know that my product is reaching towards the end of its life cycle.
Mm,
Whether it actually is or it's my own imagined way, but I think that that's the case. And going back to relevancy, like I think that's a really big part of it. And so do I think that I'm still relevant? Not necessarily.
mm,
Not the way that I would have been a couple years ago. And I know this based upon, just certain benchmarks, I guess, like whether it's like the account's not doing well or certain other things aren't working. But does that mean that I'm going to just like pack it up and stop? No, not necessarily. It just means that I need to pivot into something else that's going to not only bring me joy, but serve other people as well.
yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking about what I said to you before we started with this pivot. It was like originally I started this cuz and created what I needed, and now I need something different,
I
you
was
know?
hoping that you were going to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's true. Like I started this pandemic with a newborn and a toddler and severely depressed and was like, I need help in all of these areas. I need help with my parenting, with motherhood, with my marriage, with my body image. I need all of these things. And now, I still need those things, but I'm not in the same place with them. Like I've done now 200 interviews on them. Like I feel better. I've had 2 more years of therapy under my belt. Like 2 more years of conversations with coaches that it's like, okay, now I'm really seeing that now that I'm actually in a place mentally where I feel like I can take a business or a podcast to the next level, now I need that support. Now I need to say, okay, stuff's going on here mentally, emotionally that I feel like is hindering, blocking, hurting me from leveling up. And now I need this. And after 200 something interviews with people who all have an online presence, it's like, oh, almost every single one of them has said something along the lines of creator burnout. I'm a human too. I wish people understood more that XYZ about this industry. Like it's like everybody. So it was like, oh, okay, now we create something new.
Yes, I'm so glad that you mentioned that because if you weren't going to mention it, I was going to mention that, before we got on, Chris said blah 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 blah. So I'm glad that
Yeah.
you mentioned
Yeah.
it. It's a lot. It's so much. I mean, I have a conversation every Friday with a group of friends of mine, and it's actually we're gonna have it after you and I get off the phone. And it's called our creator chat, and that's the sort of things that we talk about. And this one very wise woman who's on it, her name is Gila. She always reminds us, "What are you on social media for?"
Mm,
She is a writer and she wanted to build an account so that she could get a literary agent to write a manuscript to get a book published and launch her book career. And years ago when I first started Instagram, that's what the majority of my friends were all trying to do. They were all writers.
mm,
They wanted to write for Scary Mommy, they wanted to write for Motherly, they wanted to get a book deal, all of those things. And so that's what we were all doing 7 years ago. And that was like pre-video Instagram. And so now Gila, she actually does video and written word, but I love that she mentions that. So I'm going to impart that information to always ask yourself, what are you doing on social media? What
mhm.
is your why? What is your reason that you get up and pick up your phone each morning and post something? And it's not just cell phone addiction,
Yeah.
right? You have to remind yourself that. And I remind myself, once she said that, I was like, you're right. I have to remind myself, like, what am I doing? Why am I here? And it's something that I'm still going through. It's still a work in progress. But once you start asking yourself those hard questions, you start to come through to the other side. Remember how you were asking me earlier in the conversation, like, how do you come through on the other side? Those are the things that get you to go through on the other side, that you really have to take a step back and separate yourself from your content, the numbers, the
Mhm.
engagement numbers, the likes, the views, and all of that kind of stuff. You have to say, who am I here for? Why am I here? And what am I creating for?
Yeah. I mean, I find that to be very personally relevant because mm, it feels like I don't want to say it, but like it's fine. I am very much motivated by the relevancy. I want to be known. And, all day long, I talk about how, we're all a bunch of creators going through the same thing. I want to help you. Let's help each other. Let's talk about this. Let's this and that. That is all there. It's like the two things can be true idea, right?
Yes.
All of that is true combined with like I daydream about being on Oprah back in the day. Like this it's like that piece is there and I feel like I'm still working to give myself permission that that's okay because it feels so icky at times. It feels, you know what? And it was like, I was having a conversation with someone, was it, oh, Beth Nidick. She's like I know her from Hey Mama. Um, and she said that she was talking about something, and they were talking about this event she went to, and she was like, and full disclosure, there was like a little bit of ulterior motive for me doing that, because this and that. And like these women were chiming in, they're like, who doesn't have ulterior motives when they're doing things? Like everyone should have ulterior motives. And like it just was like so refreshing, because it was like on one hand, she's like, yeah, I was doing this great event, and it's like to support this and that. And she goes, I also kind of really want to be part of this organization. Da, da, da. And it's like, you should want to be part of that. But it's such like it's hard. I think like generally as a creator, as an entrepreneur, like you are, it's just you. Whether you have the team or not, it's your face and it's
Mm-hmm.
your name on the door.
Mm-hmm.
And so there has to be, I think this is what I tell myself, like there has to be that level of, I am gonna put myself out there and say like, this is for me too. I don't know. It's complicated because it still
It
feels
is
hard.
so complicated. It's so complicated. I like that you explained that, because that is something that I struggle with myself. Um, I have more imposter syndrome than most people that you could ever know
It's
or
so
ever
hard to believe,
imagine.
but I
Which I
believe that at the
know,
same
I know.
time.
I said that the other day. I said, I was in a group chat and I said that, and my friend Michelle Dempsey was like, "Why do you have imposter syndrome?" I was like, "Because I do."
Yeah.
I'm the worst one about that. But like I said, I always am hyping up everyone as a cheerleader, and I don't do it to myself. But that's my own struggle. That's my own problem. Um, but going back to having a personal brand, you're right. You need to be able to you need to be able to promote yourself in a way that you feel good about, and that will then lead you to other success, right? Someone once said, what is it? Oh, I'm totally going to like blow this saying, but it's like, if you keep your mouth closed, then you won't eat,
Mm,
meaning that like you need to, go out there and market yourself, or else you're not going to make money. Right.
yeah.
So, I think that's a great saying. Now,
Yeah.
do I always do that? No, not necessarily. Will I do that for you? Yes,
I
100%.
know, I know you would.
I
Yes.
know. And so yeah, so that's I need to get better about that for myself. But I know what you're saying. Like my goal since I was like a little kid, not little kid, maybe like a teenager, was to be on the Today Show. Like
Yeah.
that to me is like the pinnacle. Has it happened? No. But like, could it someday? Yeah, it could still happen. I
Oh,
don't
it
know. I'm
could
still
totally
hopeful. It
happen.
could still happen.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, but then there's that other like voice in the back of your head being like, "Oh no, don't do that. Like play small, play it easy,
Yeah.
play it safe." Um
But,
but
like,
you're
why
right
do you
though.
think you should be like, why do you think, like, to me, myself talking to me, like, what
Yeah.
makes you think you could be on the Today Show? It's like, well, and then like the other parts, like the angel and devil thing. It's like, well, I could. I know what I'm saying. Da, da,
Yes,
da.
yes, yes. And I think sometimes like, the boldest content creators are the ones that kind of just throw themselves out there and just do that. And I struggle with the wanting to throw myself out there and not. So
Yeah.
that's it's
And then
interesting.
yeah, well, and then on the flip side, I was thinking of, um, Holly Haynes. She says she often says that if your goals only involve yourself, they're not big enough. And I just like I like that because it kind of,
That's a great one.
yeah, like it kind of keeps me, in a way, for me, it marries it. It's like it's my goal. I'm doing it. I'm doing the work, but it does involve other people. It brings other people along for the ride. It does impact other people. And it's like, okay, to me, that kind of like helps marry the two desires of personally fulfilling, but also at the end of the day, having like a bigger mission, a bigger point outside of me.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Which is I love that one. I'm gonna steal that, put it in my pocket for later. But that's always why I said that, Modern Mom Probs was not the Tara Clark show, that it was about topics. It was about
Yeah.
the community. It was about people. And only once people started people, I'm using they,
Yeah.
once they started telling me like, oh, you needed to be a personality, you need to be the brand in front of it, did I again reluctantly become that, but I always wanted it to be community based and
Yeah.
to lift other people, because I've always said, the tide raises all boats. And
Hmm.
I believe that, and I still believe that. And I think that's why I struggle so much of it being like Tara Clark as a brand versus it being like community based. So I think it's really important to just marry the two. And I
Yeah.
think I do that. I try
Mhm.
to do that. I hope that comes across to marry,
Yeah.
me as a brand with it being the topics and being community based.
Yeah. No, I totally see that in your accounts. And like you were saying earlier, if you hadn't said it, I would have. You are the biggest cheerleader of women. You are, I think I said it at your event. And it was like, if you look up women supporting women in the dictionary, like it should just say Tara Clark afterwards. Like truly,
I love
truly.
you.
It's so true. I mean, there wasn't a woman there that you hadn't deeply impacted in some way. And it didn't even, and I mean this in a good way. Like it didn't even take much. Like, it wasn't like you fed their starving children for 2 weeks. It was like you just lent a hand, you lent a voice, you lent a piece of advice, you stepped up, you shared their posts. Like, something that another thing that's, like, driving this show, this change, and I this is a whole other can of worms, but it's relevant here. I do think at times there is this underlying current of competition that doesn't need to be there. Like,
Very much so.
there is space for everyone.
Yeah.
There's gazillions of people in the world. We all are gonna touch people in different ways.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And that's one of the things where I sort of say, like, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic social media landscape is that it used to be, I'm speaking specifically for Instagram, much more collaborative.
Mhm.
That people wanted to grow together, that they would share each other's content, that that you wanted to see your friends succeed.
Yeah.
Now, post pandemic, with like the introduction and the explosion of TikTok, everyone was out there recording the same trending audio.
Yeah.
Everyone was out there recording the same quote that was written by someone else 3 years ago.
Yep.
And everyone was just like in their own silos, like building their own accounts and doing their own thing. And
Mhm.
that's not what it used to be like years ago. Like if someone took someone else's quote, everyone was like up in arms. They're like, no, 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 that's this person wrote
Yes.
this and that. And now it's just like just everyone's just taking everyone's stuff and it's not cool and it's not fun. And so I know I sound like such like an old person being like, but it was better the old way. It wasn't
Yeah.
that. It was more collaborative
Yeah.
that way pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic because like I said, the trending audios, the same 5 reels over and over and over again, like it's just like that wasn't what you were seeing back then. I think that it was a lot more, I don't want to say more creative. That's not really true. It's extraordinarily creative now. The people that are creating original content are extraordinarily
Well,
creative.
that's it. It's
But it's the
the
average,
original,
yeah, the original stuff is
the originality.
extraordinarily good.
Yeah.
It's just for the masses now that are using the same, 5 trending audio sounds, it's just
Yeah.
exhausting. But yeah, I agree about it seems a lot more competitive where everyone's just jockeying to build their account for, their silo or their different things. Things
Yeah.
have really changed in the last 3 years in the social media landscape, at least from what I've noticed.
Yeah. Well, and it makes sense to me, especially hearing how when you started and your circle were a bunch of writers.
Mhm.
And that makes sense when I think back to what yours, Linda's, Michelle's, all of those girls' accounts, women, I should say women, excuse me,
Yeah, I say girls too, yeah.
women's accounts were, it was the still image block with something that you had originally written.
Correct.
And
Yep.
then it moved to those blocks with the like almost like watermark of your handle under there because everyone was taking your stuff.
Yep.
And now it's like those same sorts of things, but it has to be over a video with audio and the whole thing. And so it makes a lot of sense because I think particularly, writers, like that is truly like from
Yeah,
from
yeah,
you,
no,
from
it's
you.
crazy, like, there are
Yeah.
so many really funny, um, Instagram writers who all their jokes were then all stolen and then all over TikTok,
They still are.
and they
Yeah.
still are, they
Yeah.
still are, and it's so frustrating to see that, but that's what the landscape looks like now.
Yeah.
And so they're not necessarily even crediting the original writer. I mean, there was an account recently that was um they were making memes from a very popular TV show, and they were taking quotes that they had found on Pinterest and putting it over pictures
Uh,
from this very popular TV show. Well, the very popular TV show gave them a cease and desist, and so they
whoop,
had to stop.
whoop, whoop.
But they built nearly a 1 million account, 1 million follower account
Wow.
based upon this particular show and the quotes that they got from Pinterest. And people like were up in arms about that because like not only were they taking images from the TV show,
Yeah.
they were taking other people's written word and putting them together. And the account just exploded because the average user, the average consumer has no idea that, someone else who has an account wrote that. And so for me, like, do I share my friends' work? Yes. But the people who I share are friends of mine, right? They're in my circle. I don't just
Well,
like
and
go
you're
out and
giving
like,
credit.
of course. Yeah, of course.
Right. Like
And they
that's
know
the
that I'm
key.
doing it. Yeah.
Right. Hello. It's like this is from this person,
Yes.
you
This is
know?
from this person. They know I'm sharing it. We've talked about it,
Yeah.
and so I remember one time one of like the newer creators was saying something about people stealing each other's work. Mostly it was like the trending audio and people stealing quotes. And I saw one of the comments and someone wrote, yeah, and there's a really big account that's like near a million who just like shares other people's stuff. And like they didn't use my name, but I felt like they probably were using my name. But what newer people don't understand versus like the older community is that like, yeah, I'm doing that intentionally so that we can rise all the tide
Yes.
to get, rise all the boats together, and that we're doing it because my friends who may not have an account that's as big as mine, like I want them to get eyeballs on their account. I want to share the love.
Yes.
And but it's like I said, a different landscape. And so people don't necessarily know that. They may think that I'm doing it just to like, I don't know, just
Yeah.
to steal people's stuff or take people's stuff, but that was never the intention. The intention has always been camaraderie and community.
Yeah. Okay. And the last thing I want to ask you about just in a minute here
Yeah,
is
yeah.
I made a note of, you know, then my note says staying true to yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that that is coming to me now because there is this pressure, right? And this feeling of going with the trends. Um, what's everybody like? What are the audios? What are the, even like how for a while, like it was the trend to like just point at the words in the
Yeah.
videos, you
Yep.
know?
Yep.
It went from
Yep.
dancing to pointing at the words and, like there's all these things. And I wonder, a- as a person sitting here today, I can say I know the value of staying true to myself. But 3 days from now, I'm gonna be on my account going, "Well, if I just do this one video like this, maybe that'll be the one that
Yeah.
blows up and this and that." And so any advice for staying how we really just stay true to ourselves and feel really good about the content that we put out there?
Yes. I struggle with that too. But there's one thing that you could know for a fact about me. You will never see me dancing on a video. I I promise you that. There's nothing wrong with people that do. It's just not who
Mhm.
I am. And so
Right.
if you ever see Tara Clark dancing on a video, you
I'm
know
coming
that
to your
I've just
house.
you come to my house.
I'm knocking
I've
down the
just
door. Like, "What? Where is she? Is she okay? Is she
you
alive?"
just you just know that I've just like abandoned my own like self altogether. And like I said, it's totally fine for other people because like that's who they are. You have to do you, right?
Right.
And so the pressure is there. It is there. You see it. It's in your every time you scroll your phone, you're like, up dancing video, up dancing, pointing to word
Pointing
video,
video. Yeah. Yep.
um, but you have to sit and think, and that goes back to when you have like quiet reflection time when you're thinking about creating your content, is like, what do you feel good about? And I always ask myself these three questions. Is it educational? Is it inspiring? Is it entertaining?
Mm,
And not every single piece of content is going to be all three of those. But if you have maybe two of those three, or at least one of those three, then it makes sense, right? Because you want to provide value to your audience.
mhm.
I mean, sometimes it may be 3 out of 3, but usually it's not. But I always want to inspire or educate or entertain. And so everything that I do, for the most part, sometimes I don't, but for the most part, it is part of those. but the pressure is there. And that goes right back to what we were saying, that it's a systemic issue of that's the way that the platform is built. Like
Yeah.
you're seeing that and you're seeing people do a dance video and they're crushing it. And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I want to get that kind of engagement. And that
Yeah.
same thing happens to me all of the time.
Right.
But I'm still not going to do something that in my heart of hearts, I don't feel good about. And that also goes back to the vulnerability, right? People are always like, oh, you got to be more vulnerable. You got to like explain all of that kind of stuff and like really go in there. Sometimes maybe I just don't want to.
Right.
And if I was vulnerable without really wanting to, then that's also not true to myself,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's
Mm-hmm.
performative. And
Mm-hmm.
if there's one thing I hate is like performative for the sake of performative.
Yep. And people see right through it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the people on the internet are a lot of things, but you're not going to fool a million people. There's going to be people that see right through you. And those are the ones, that's a lot of times when people say, like, don't force your content. Like people can feel even your energy if
Yeah.
you're not into it or you're not passionate about it and all the things. So
yeah, no, that's absolutely true. I wish, if there was one wish I had for social media, is that they would take away any kind of metrics, that you couldn't see the likes and you couldn't see the shares or the views, so that people could create simply for the love of creating. There's an Instagram account called Inspired to Write, and it's specifically for creators, and highly, highly recommend it. And that's the kind of stuff that she talks about. Like, what would you create for the sake of creating? What would you create if you weren't being graded on it?
yeah.
And that is really something that you have to ask yourself too. So you have to ask your questions of, why am I on social media? What is my purpose here? What would I create if there were no metrics involved? Is it entertaining? Is it inspiring? Is it educational? All of those things you have to ask yourself when you're doing this, or else honestly, why bother?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we doing any of this? Like you said to me, like, why do I do it aside from a cell phone addiction and a dopamine addiction?
Right.
Why are we doing any of this?
Right.
And we also have to keep in mind, like you said so beautifully, is like sometimes we need to evolve. Sometimes we need to pivot. That's where I've been in the last year, and I'm still working through that myself.
Mm-hmm.
But the more that I am sort of seeing clearly, the more that that's helping me.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, Tara Clark. Anything lingering that you didn't feel like you got to say? Anything on burnout? Anything you want to make sure to leave people with? I know you just said you just said a lot right there, so it's okay if not. But I just want to give you.
I feel like that was already
that
my
was a good one. Yeah,
recap takeaway.
That was a good one.
Can I mention this? I'm actually hosting a creator burnout workshop in October. May I mention that? Okay,
yeah.
Cool. I'm gonna mention it. So I am hosting a creator burnout workshop in October. It's October 5th at 12 p.m. Eastern time. You could find the link at my link in bio on my Instagram account. I think it's like the top link in my link in bio.
Awesome.
So we're going to be talking about all of this kind of stuff. We'll be talking about the stuff that I presented at Mom 2.0 and some of the stuff that we just talked about here.
Awesome. I'm going to sign up right now. Anyway, Tara Clark, thank you so much for your time. It's always such a pleasure talking to you, and truly call upon us when you need a cheerleader, because you've been there for so many of us, and we just appreciate you so much. So thank you.
I love you so much. Thank you for having me. Can we go get dinner sometime soon?
Yes, please. I was just saying that to my husband yesterday. He's like, what do you have tomorrow? I was like, oh, I'm interviewing Tara Clark. He's like, I hear this name a lot. Like, why don't you just go to dinner? I was like, okay, I know I should.
We could go to the barn. Well, we could go to anywhere, but it's fine.
I don't think I've been there since I was a kid, actually. But yeah, anywhere. Truly. I want to do it. We got to do it. Okay.
Awesome.
All right. I'll text you.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Creator burnout. As Tara said, it can come from that hamster wheel that is the differentiator between the content creator world and most other jobs. Because she's so right. It never ends. The internet doesn't turn off. There's always someone scrolling at any time of day. There's no open and close signs. And the more content you can put out, the more you're rewarded. This is exhausting, but luckily there are some strategies to try to alleviate this. And I noticed that there was a common, very simple strategy that Tara kept coming back to, and it was about taking a step back and checking in with yourself. And this has come up so much on the show before in so many different aspects of life, and it's no different here in the digital space. Look out for signs of burnout. Does looking at your phone make you feel physically sick? Are you constantly trying to think of a great idea, but never coming up with the right one? Do you have ideas, but you're reluctant to take action? Take a step back and take a break. Get something tangible. Get a notebook, get a journal, write down your ideas, get away from your phone so that your brain has a chance to be creative on its own. And what I'm getting at here is that if you don't do that, it's so easy to get stuck in that comparison trap. Because while you're scrolling and scrolling, looking for your own motivation and inspiration, if you're not in a good place with yourself and your content, you're really just going to start comparing yourself to what other people are doing. Oh, she's posting more. Oh, she's so funny. Oh, she's so clever. Why can't I do that? Why aren't I getting the views and the likes and the comments that this person is? It's not a good place to be. And so I encourage you to get away from the phone, take a breath. This break might be for a day, it might be for a week, it might be for a month. You've got to see how you feel and what feels right for you. We also talked a lot about personal boundaries, because when we're on that hamster wheel, we can lose track of our authentic voice. We can lose track of what we're posting and saying and doing, and we can get really lost if we're not checking in. And so again, Tara says, it comes down to sitting with ourselves first, to figure out our vision, decide what we're willing to put out there. I think a lot of times content creators underestimate how important it is to be intentional about what you share. Because, not everyone deserves your vulnerability. And your comfort level over time may change. Tara's did. Tara also spoke about pivoting in her content as her family evolves. And I love that. It's so exciting. But I also know it can be scary because growth and newness often are. Tara talked about how her son is getting older, which demands different types of content. And all of that is okay. But I know it can be so overwhelming to find out, what do you authentically want to say? Who do you want to be online? What's your lane? What's your voice? So I want to really encourage you to take notice of the signs of creator burnout so you can address it. Remember to stay true to yourself. Remember what you're doing this for, the connections you're making, and the people you're serving and helping. There is enough room for everyone, I promise you that. So when in doubt, return to that self-reflection and turn to people like me, turn to people like Tara that get it, that you can talk to, that you can DM and say, oh my gosh, I'm spiraling, help me. There are people out there like Tara, like myself, that get it and want to talk to you and want to help you because, like I said, there is room for everyone. We're a team. We're a community, creators, okay? Let's help each other out and stay true to ourselves, right? All right. Thank you for listening. Tara, I adore you. Your support over the years has meant so much to me, and I've so enjoyed getting to know you better over the course of our shared journey here with supporting creators. I just thank you so much for your support, and thank you for being here and sharing all of your wisdom with us fellow creators, new, old, different, all the things. Just thank you, thank you. I will see you next time for the next interview of the Inner Edit. All right, bye. Thanks so much for listening. This podcast is a production of Luann Nigara, Inc. To learn more about me, my world, all the things going on, head over to ChristieRocha.com. Bye.